Crime is everywhere and consistently on the rise. Quick and easy cases are solved daily, but what of those other cases? The ones that have gone cold with no new leads or information. The famous serial killers have been captured and made public. But what of those still on the loose, or even worse, still killing? Welcome to the realm of darkness. Your host, Rainey and Ashley, will be your guides into the mysterious world of true crime cases and stories. Here are your hosts, Rainey and Ashley.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Realm of Darkness. I'm Rainey, obviously Ashley.
Hello.
And we have an exciting guest on
Yes.
this evening, so I'm going to let Ashley kind of introduce you.
Yes, I am extremely excited about this one. She is a best-selling author. She's known for her History and Haunting series of Stanley Hotel, Lizzie Borden, The Salem Witch Trials, and she has a new book called Countdown to Murder, and this is Rebecca Pittman.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really well. How are you doing?
I am good, thank you. So I am so excited to hear about your book. So can you tell us a little bit about what it involves and kind of the murder that it entails?
It's called Countdown to Murder, Pam Hupp, Death Insured. And there's a reason for the insured, and you'll find out about that. Pam, this story is exploding primarily because of an NBC miniseries, People Magazine, Dateline. It's ongoing even now. They're looking at new evidence even now for an upcoming trial for Pam because she's suspected of killing 3 people. There may be a 4th one in Florida that we're looking into. But she's in prison on death row right now for killing Louis Gumpenberger. But they're now collecting evidence for the trial against her for Betsy Faria, which was her best friend that was found stabbed 56 times. And Pam benefited from the $150,000 life insurance policy that Betsy left behind. Her mother plunged from a 3rd-story balcony. Again, Pam got the insurance money, which is why I called it Death Insured. The young man that Pam shot and is in prison for now had nothing to do with that. She shot him simply to frame another man. He was expendable. He was a total stranger, and she lured him to her home and shot him. It's just a case that boggles the mind. I'm constantly going, this didn't really happen. This can't be true, but it is.
Yeah, and she was going back to Betsy, they worked together, correct? And they
Yes.
had become close, and it was just a few days beforehand that she became her life insurance beneficiary.
Correct. Pam and Betsy worked together 10 years prior to the murder at an insurance company. They were both insurance agents, and then they parted ways like people do. Betsy started a little part-time DJ service and actually DJ'd for Pam's daughter's wedding. But they weren't seeing each other. They weren't hanging out until in 2010, Betsy found out she had breast cancer. And they removed both her breasts. They thought they'd gotten it all. They planned a celebration of life cruise in 2011, but a month before the cruise, they found out not only was the cancer back, it had spread to her liver, and they gave her 3 years to live.
Oh, wow.
Enter Pam Hupp. Suddenly, Pam is back in her life, taking her to her chemo treatments, going to watch her play tennis, walking with her, exercise. Wherever Betsy was for that time period, there was Pam. And so here's what happened. Pam said, look, because I know you're trying to set something up for when you're gone so that your 2 daughters will have money when they need it at the big landmarks in life, like a marriage or a car or college. You know they're going to blow through it when you die.
Oh, yeah.
You know your husband's going to blow through it. Make me the beneficiary, and I'll make sure they get the money as they get older. And Betsy did. She made Pam the beneficiary of a $150,000 life insurance policy, and 4 days later, Betsy was murdered.
Wow. That's incredible that somebody is able to put up such a facade for so long, especially when someone's going through something so sad as breast cancer.
And during this time period, Betsy wanted to do something good. They had a friend who was also diagnosed with cancer. And so she and Pam, and I got a feeling this was Pam's idea, decided to go door to door and collect for this woman so that her little girl would have something when she died. And they collected $10,000 for this woman. No one knows today where that money went. The shocking thing is the woman that had the cancer and her husband had never heard of it. They had no idea they were out campaigning for them. And it was a couple of years after Betsy died that the local reporter went to the husband and said, "You didn't know anything about this?" He said, "No." The reporter showed him the flyer they used, and the guy he just crumbled. He goes, "That was our Christmas photo we sent out."
Wow.
So Pam had taken the photo from the Christmas card, made a flyer. They went, and Betsy didn't know any of this. She thought she was doing something good for someone else. And I'm pretty sure Pam pocketed the $10,000. The family never saw it. They didn't know anything about it.
Oh my gosh, that's awful. That almost leaves me speechless that somebody would do something like that. I mean, it's just awful.
I called it Countdown to Murder because this lady literally had to be laying awake every night, counting down the steps, almost like a laundry list of what she was going to do. It's chilling. I mean, the way she pivoted every time to avoid suspicion, somebody always died. And so it was usually when she needed money. And it's insidious. It's the only word I can put to it.
So did they ever say how much money in total that she got between Betsy's murder, the $10,000 of this, and then now did her mother pass when she was pushed from the third story?
Yeah, and that's a really sad story. Basically, she got 100,000 of her mom's. It was 500,000, but Pam had to split it between her 3 other siblings. Then the funeral costs came out. I'll tell you quickly what happened with her mother. All of this was going, okay, look, I need to start kind of with Betsy's murder because it's all linked. So Pam, on the day Betsy died, she had a chemo treatment. And it was the same night that Russ, her husband, usually had game night. Every Tuesday night, he was over at his buddies. They did this role-playing thing. So Pam knew he wasn't going to be home. He didn't get home usually till 9. So she was going to take Betsy to her chemo appointment that day, and Betsy'd spent the night at her mother's to be closer to where this cancer center was. So Pam texted her at 1:19 on the day of the murder and said, "I'm on my way to get you." And Betsy texted her back and said, "Don't come. My friend Bobby Juan is here. She's mom, she used to babysit me when I was little. She's staying with mom tonight. We want to do some one-on-one time. We just want to be alone. So you don't have to take me today." Pam later told detectives she never got that text. Yet when they ran Pam's cell phone data, not only did she get it, she replied, "Bummer." She shows up at Betsy's mother's house, Janet, anyway. She shows up at 1:30 and Janet said they've already gone. Pam didn't know they moved the appointment up. Undaunted, Pam goes ahead and goes to the cancer center, and Betsy's shocked to see her walk in. And she stays with her throughout the treatment. Then Betsy and Bobby go off to dinner alone. Pam went home and had dinner with her husband and then said, "I'm coming back to drive you home tonight." Well, and Betsy's going, "You don't have to do that. Russ is picking me up after his game." She goes, No, that's too late for you to wait till 9:00. I'm going to come get you. And she's very pushy. So Betsy, who's tired from the chemo, her white count was low, is going, okay. So Pam shows up at 5:30. They make her wait an hour while they finish a board game. And then she drives Betsy home. They pull into Betsy's driveway. This is 30 minutes away from her mother's home at 7:04. And so Pam starts establishing her alibi. She calls her husband ostensibly to say, "I'm at Betsy's. I'm almost done, and then I'm coming home." And then she goes, "Here, Betsy, say hi to Mark," and literally like puts the phone in Betsy's face. And Betsy goes, "Hey, Mark, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year." And it's so she's established Betsy's alive and well when they arrive at the house. And then here's where the story changes. The next morning, the detectives come to her. Betsy's been found dead, and they ask her, "Did you go in the house?" No, I didn't. You didn't go in the house at all? No, it was kind of creepy because like there were no lights on, but the door was open, and I just didn't want to go in. Two sentences later, "So you didn't go in the house?" You know what? I did. I went in and I turned on the foyer light for her. And I turned on the living room light while she was putting the dog out and putting him on a chain. So now Pam is in the house. Her DNA's on the foyer light. Her DNA's on the living room light. And they said, "Is that it?" I may have gone in the kitchen and turned that light on. Oh, and Betsy took me to the master bedroom to show me a Christmas present Russ gave her. I mean, all of a sudden it went from I didn't go in at all till she got the grand tour of the house. And so anyway, what happened was Russ did come home that night at 9:00. Well, he got there at 9:37 and walked in, set a bag of dog food down that he purchased, took off his Harley jacket, laid it over a chair, and looked down and saw her, his wife. And she was wearing dark clothing, and it was hard to tell how many times she'd been stabbed. What he saw was a knife still sticking out of her neck, blood everywhere, blood on her face, and then her wrists had been slashed so deeply that the one was clear to the bone. And so he saw the slashed wrists, the knife, the blood, that her tongue was protruding, and he totally panicked. He looked at her, got up, stumbled to the kitchen. He's in hysterics and calls 911. And he goes, "I think my wife killed herself." That was going to come back to pretty much bury him. But that's what he thought. She had tried it before when she found out she had cancer. Not like that. She was waving a knife around saying, "I don't want to live." And he took it from her, and he actually got cut himself in the process. She'd left a suicide note before. So in his shock, that's what he thought happened, because she just had chemo that day, and he thought maybe she got bad news. So the police come and they take one look at her, and they're going, "This lady did not commit suicide." So they take him to the station. They keep him for 36 hours of grilling him, including part of a holdover. They take him in for a fake polygraph test and come in and say, "You did this." He goes, "No, I did not." And he's got these alibis. He's got pictures showing him putting gas in the car at Conoco on the way to game night, pictures in the store buying the dog food, the Snapple tea, and all of this other stuff. He's wearing the same clothes you see him wearing, not a drop of blood on him. There's no blood in the drains at the house. They removed the drain pipes. There's nothing. No bloody towels. How'd this guy clean up? And so while they're grilling him, they finally say, "Russ, you did this. This was a crime of passion." She was stabbed 25 times. This is the first time he's heard it, and he doubled over and went, "Oh my God." And they said, "And they're still counting." And he's now realizing, "I'm in trouble." And he's going, "I did not do this. I did not do this." And finally said, "I want a lawyer." And that ended it. So they let him go home, and they had the funeral a few days later. One day after Betsy's funeral, they arrested him.
On what evidence? That's my question. If he had alibis and no blood, and on what evidence, aside from him mistaking it as a suicide, could they have arrested him?
Back at the crime scene, they find a pair of bloody men's slippers in the master bedroom closet. They find blood on the light switch leading into the closet. And they've got Pam. The next morning when they go to her house, even though she's got all these inconsistent stories, they're buying all of it. And they said, well, what was their relationship like? She goes, he was mean to her. He was verbally abusive. He called her really bad names and the daughters. He pushed her. A week before Betsy died, he started playing this game of putting a pillow over her face and saying, this is going to be what it's like when you die. I mean, she is just burying, none of this was true. She goes, a couple of weeks ago when we went to the gym, there was Betsy took her Gatorade bottle out and took a drink of it and spit it out and said, there's something wrong with it, hinting he poisoned that. And then she goes, and she told me there was a letter she was going to send me on her laptop. And I think it talks about the pillow thing and her wanting me to have the life insurance money to help her daughters. If you could find that, that'd be great because I never got it. So between the bloody slippers, which are Russ's slippers, blood on the light switch, him saying it looked like she committed suicide, and Pam, who was just throwing everything she could at them, they arrested him.
Wow.
I mean, if you find men's bloody slippers, it's it's not a good thing.
No, but I mean, you would think that in the fingerprints on the light switches that they'd be able to pull fingerprints or DNA or some sort of evidence from the crime scene that would point to him aside from slippers, especially since Pam already mentioned she was in the house. I mean, I feel so. What happened with Russ?
There's a thing that's interesting with the light switch blood and the blood that was found on the knife handle that's still in her neck. It didn't look like a palm print. It didn't look like fingerprints. It had a weave pattern, like fabric. And for the longest time, nobody could figure out what that was. It didn't look like, a glove, latex glove or anything else. They couldn't figure out what it was. It wasn't until last year during the probable cause statement that Mike Wood, the new prosecuting attorney, put out. When Betsy was discovered laying on the floor, her little anklet socks were halfway off her feet. You could see her bare heel. And he said it looked like the socks showed fingers in the socks, not toes. And they had blood on them. So what it looks like is the murderer took those little socks off, dipped them in her blood, swiped that light switch, put it around the knife handle, whether it was to obliterate her own fingerprints or just whatever, I don't know. Then they found out later that the slippers looked like they'd been dipped in blood. They had not stepped in blood. There was no blood on the bottom.
Wow.
So that's why the DNA, there's no fingerprints on the light switch or the knife blade. They have come back with a teeny bit of male DNA on the knife handle, and they're turning everything over now, trying to figure that one out to see if she had an accomplice.
So she really, I mean, just with the amount of time and thought that she put into this, she truly is very meticulous in what she did. So this had to have been planned. It couldn't have been just a random argument or anything of that nature to cause her to kill her friend.
I think she planned it for 2 years. She insinuated herself into Betsy's life in 2010. Betsy died the end of 2011. It was only 2 days after Christmas. And that's what the scene was so sad is here's the girl's stocking still hanging there, and yet there's blood spatter on Christmas presents. And it's just, in fact, the following morning, they made her poor daughter, Mariah, who was only 17, walk through there. The body was gone, and say, do you see anything that's missing? I can't even imagine. She just saw her mother the night before. She saw her 1 hour before she was murdered. And then to have to walk through there, even though they were removing carpet swatches and the blood off of the couch fabric, there was blood that went clear through to the pad, and the pad was still there on the living room floor. I can't even imagine what she went through.
No, the trauma of just seeing that scene and then a few days later having your father arrested for possibly killing your mother. I mean, the trauma of those two children is just incredible. It's sad. It's very sad.
Well, I interviewed Mariah quite a bit for the book. She was wonderful. She gave me beautiful family pictures, told me a lot about her mom. And I asked what that was like to go through there the following morning. She goes, I still have flashbacks. She goes, I will probably always have flashbacks. And then to have her stepfather arrested, he'd raised them basically since she was 2. And the prosecution turned these 2 girls against him. They made them think he did it. They said, look, we've got all this evidence. I know you don't want to believe he did it, but he did it. And they even had to go on the stand during his trial and have them say, what was it like living in that house? And they had to admit it wasn't the Brady Bunch, which is what one of them said. There was a lot of yelling all the time, and Russ could be verbally abusive. And so for him today, he's still not talking to them, which is really sad. That was 11 years ago, and he's not talking to them. And, you know, he went to prison for 3.5 years, and that would be so hard. I have 4 sons. And if one of them were sitting up there and literally adding to the case that's going to bury me, it would be really hard later. I'd forgive him, but it would be really hard.
Because he sat on death row for 3 years, correct?
He was not on death row ever.
He was not. Okay.
No.
So he was just on a life sentence.
He got, at the end, he got a year. He got life plus 30 years.
Wow.
So at the trial, his attorney, Joel Schwartz, was trying to interview Pam because Joel Schwartz is going, you need to look over here, people. This is the last person to see her alive. She got $150,000 4 days after she signs this beneficiary thing. He goes, there's another person you can look at. And because the prosecuting attorney and the judge knew each other, it was the prosecuting attorney's first trial, murder trial. It was the judge's first murder trial. They shut him down. They told him he could not ask Pam those questions while she was on the stand, that she's not suspected, that she's been a helpful witness. It's impeaching our witness. He can't do that. And the judge agreed. And he's like pulling his hair out. And so he said, I want to do an offer of proof, which means the jury's excused. They don't get to hear it. And he asked her the questions he wanted to, and even then, the prosecuting attorney shut him down. They wouldn't let him ask the questions. Until finally, he looked at the judge. He goes, I don't know whether to strip naked and bang my head against the bar to get your attention here. This is not fair to my client. They have a right to hear there could be someone else so that there's reasonable doubt. That's fair to my client. And they wouldn't let him do it. So the jury heard none of it.
Do you think that the judge and the and the PA was just looking for a conviction?
At that point, yeah. They thought, and the detectives, they thought, we've got our man. We're not going to look at anybody else. And I will give this to Pam. She is a genius at conversation. Watching all the videos, I even liked her. I mean, she knew how to be your best buddy to the male detective. She'd joke with him about Magic Mike, you know, and she's just this housewife. And it was really hard for anybody to believe somebody could do that. The final count from the coroner was 56 stab wounds, possibly 57. The knife had gone through Betsy's neck twice, all the way through and through. So we believe Betsy was laying on the couch, that Pam was getting ready to leave, and she propped up on the couch with her head on the pillow and got her little blanket on and was going to watch TV, and that the first blow was straight through her neck, which severed her windpipe.
Oh my gosh.
At that point, she was a goner. I mean, the evidence shows, the photos show that she lunged from the couch, and there's defensive wounds like this. She was holding her cell phone because her other daughter, Leah, was going to call her to authorize a phone charge thing at the cellular phone store that she could put her on her plan. Mm-hmm. She said she'd be calling her, and she had the phone in her hand. When Leah called at 7:27, no answer. 7:29, no answer. 7:30, no answer. So she was either being attacked at that time or already dead.
Wow.
So the blood on the carpet shows that she must have lunged from the couch, hit the ground twice. You can see the blood patterns in two places. And she had that blanket wrapped around her, which was still halfway wrapped around her when she finally died. And the cell phone with blood on it. So obviously she's got it in her hand when she's being attacked. It's found laying on the floor and a hearth rug kicked over where she'd lunged from the couch. And then the attacker just kept, she had every major organ punctured, every one of them. And even Martin, the knives in her back, the wounds in her back, which again, they're making fun of Russ. Yeah, she committed suicide, Russ. She could knife herself in the back. And the thing that was the worst, Renee and Ashley, is that most of those wounds were post-mortem, meaning there were very few that were actually the fatal ones. The rest were done to make it look like an act of rage. They just kept going. The one I told you that was bone deep, no blood. That thing would have bled profusely,
yes.
but because it was after her heart stopped pumping, there was no, I mean, how can you do that to somebody?
And it's as awful and horrible as it sounds, it's almost, for Betsy's sake, almost a blessing that she didn't have to feel that pain after all the trauma that she had already gone through.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awful. And now I know that Russ was accused of all of this. So how did the tables turn to Pam, and when did they start to realize that maybe she actually did have something to do with this?
Pam buried herself, interestingly enough. She made one big boo-boo. Russ is convicted. He goes to prison. And so Pam thinks she's home free. She got away with it. She went ahead and spent Betsy's money. And she and her husband flipped houses. So she got a house that was at auction, spent the money. So in the meantime, the girls are going, you know what? Heck with this. We're going to sue her. So they go ahead and set up a civil case. It's so for Pam to go to that, they have you come in for what's called a deposition. So the girls' attorneys brought Pam in, kind of see where things stand. Are you going to give them any money or not? And Pam is flirting with the camera. She's all coquettish, and she's just looks so confident, except her hands are clasped uncharacteristically. Usually they're fluttering everywhere. And she looks more nervous. She's twisting a bracelet around. She's, biting her lips. She's got a kind of a nerve. You can tell she knows she's in enemy camp now. And they said, what do you plan on doing with the money? She goes, today I plan on doing nothing with the money. And they said, well, are you going to give it to the girls? She goes, no, it was a revocable trust. I revoked it. I put the money in real estate. Like, go ahead, do what you want to.
Wow.
So the minute she left, and here's where she tripped up, she's all confident and bragging. They're not getting anything. I spent it. The attorney jumped on the phone to Russ's attorney, Joel Schwartz, who was trying to find anything he could to get an appeal, to get a second trial. He said, this may interest you. Pam Hupp was just here and she spent the money. She's not giving it to the girls. He lit up. That's what he needed. So he went to a new judge, presented all the evidence he had against Pam, including her spending that money, and got Russ a second trial. So just skip over that real quickly. Right after Russ's second trial was the civil case with the girls, and Pam won. So
she won?
She won. The judge said the paperwork was all in order. There was nothing he could do. He said Betsy was in life insurance. If she wanted to put their names on there, she could have, and she didn't. It says Pam. So she won. So in the meantime, because she said that, Russ gets a second trial. This time, Joel's ready, guns blazing, and no jury this time, just a bench trial with Judge Omer, and he wins. Russ is acquitted.
I was going to clap.
His knees went out from under him. He'd been in jail for 3.5 years. He went outside. His friends are hugging him. Somebody put a St. Louis Cardinals cap on his head because this is St. Louis. And now Pam is sweating bullets. Joel has made no mistake. I'm coming for you. It's not enough I got him off. You did this. So this is where the string of other deaths start happening. So basically, Russ is acquitted. This is at the end of 2015. But right before that second trial, one of the detectives, the prosecuting attorney's detectives, brought Pam in and said, look, did you ever put that money in a trust for the girls? Because if you didn't, that could look bad. Not only that you were the last person with her, and we believe you. It's just, could you put that money back in right before his trial? It'll look better. We'll have a better chance of sinking him again. Pam's going, okay. Well, she spent the money. So her mother's in a senior citizen living facility and has had a little bit of dementia. At least that's what Pam claims, except I doubt she'd be in a third floor apartment with a balcony if she had that big a problem. So anyway, on October 30th, Pam had taken her to the doctor. She had her spend the night with her, and she brought her back to the facility at 5 o'clock, which is right when dinner hour starts for all the residents. She takes her mom upstairs, and what we do know is Pam came down, and I'm guessing not much longer than 30 to 45 minutes because dinner hour ended at 6:30. And she came down and said, mom's done for the night. She's not coming down for dinner. She may not be down for breakfast. If she's not down for lunch, why don't you check on her tomorrow? Okay, Pam, sure thing. So the next day at 2:30, the staff went up and entered her room after knocking because they hadn't seen her for breakfast or lunch, and water was running, and the door to the balcony was open. And that poor housekeeper walked out and looked over the balcony, and Pam's mother is laying there on her back. It had rained the whole night before. It had rained during the day, heavy fog. That woman laid there all night. And according to the coroner, he doesn't believe she died the night before when Pam was with her. He thinks she lasted laying out there in the rain until about an hour to 2 hours before that housekeeper found her based on her liver temperature. And she died. She left her like that. And what she did to make it look like an accident was kicked out 6 of the bars of the balcony, the spindles, to look like Shirley in her dementia and whatever had fallen and gone through them. And 2 of the bars were laying under her body. But when they did tests later, they said it would take literally a John Deere tractor hitting that thing to do that. Shirley weighed 210. They said even 440 pounds was not going to do that. So it looked like someone stood there and kicked them out at the bottom of the spindles where they would pop out like that. And everything was bent in the same place like someone kicked them. And I think she planned it so that all the residents would be at dinner and they wouldn't hear her doing that. I mean, and she walked away with $100,000, exactly what the detective asked her to hurry up and put in the bank. And then she goes into Leah Askey, the prosecuting attorney, with a purse with a bag of cash right before the trial and says, look, see, I have it. Here's $100,000. She brought in all the cash because they were in an interrogation room and she wanted the camera to see it. Yep. So you can't have a camera see a check, but They could sure see all the cash. And only 4 days before his trial, she put that money in. Her mother died literally 2.5 weeks before the trial. That's how close she came. And she put the money in to show she had it.
Wow. And now, when that happened, did they instantly rule that as an accident, or did they ruled it as an accident?
And even though the coroner found 8 times the amount of Ambien in this woman's body that would be normal. So Pam drugged her. She probably just led her over to the balcony and shoved her. Yeah.
Wow.
But with the next murder that's coming up, once that one happened, they reopened this case, and it is now undetermined for Shirley, for the mom. And they're looking into it as we speak.
Oh, wow. Good. Yeah, because she's only in prison for the man that she shot.
Correct, which is the next one.
Yes. Wow.
Do you have any questions on that before I jump into the other one?
It's just crazy to think, because I know one of the things that I learned from you is that female serial killers really are only like 5 to 7%. So
Yeah.
the fact that this woman was able to just take people out in this manner, it's baffling to me.
I have nothing, because I'm just sitting here listening and just trying to take it all in, and I still cannot like wrap my head around it. Honestly.
Yeah, I'm watching your face going.
I know, and I'm sorry.
It's
like, I have
No.
like I'm waiting to like ask a question, because I was like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen next? Like, I feel like I'm reading a book, you know what I mean? So I'm like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen next?
Oh, I still can't believe this actually happened. I really can't. So anyway, so money goes in, but they didn't even call Pam to the stand during Russ's second trial. She was furious. She wanted her day in the sun. She wanted to be in the spotlight. The prosecuting attorney didn't call her to the stand either, for a very good reason. I hope you're ready for this one. Right before Russ's second trial, when the detectives brought Pam in, they actually led her and said, because they're so desperate to bury him again, because it's going to look bad for them too. There's tainted evidence that they manufactured. They had people perjure themselves on the stand to send this guy to prison, and they need him to go back to prison, because it's not just Pam's butt on the line at this point, it's theirs too. So they actually, and this is recorded, they're doing it in front of a camera in the police interrogation room. They go, we've been talking amongst ourselves, and we wanted to throw this out at you. By any chance, when you came out the door that night after you dropped Betsy off, did you see Russ? Maybe he was in a car. Maybe he saw you come out. And she went, no. That was in July. So keep in mind, his trial was November.
Mm-hmm.
She came back in October and said, you know what? I do remember. I did see somebody. I saw two men in a car, and you can hear the detective's voice getting all excited. He goes, you did? Could you tell who it was? Yeah, I think it was Russ. And I'm going, oh my gosh, 3.5 years later, you now remember this? And she goes, and he ducked when he saw me look at him. I mean, I'm listening to these recordings going, are you kidding me? And the detective is thrilled. Oh, good, we've got something else. And she goes, and one other thing, and I haven't brought this up because it's embarrassing. Betsy and I were lovers. And she said, so Russ found out about it, and he caught us once, and he shoved me up against the wall, and the spit's flying out of his mouth. If I ever catch you blankety blanks doing it again, I'll catch you up and bury you and put you in the backyard. 3.5 years later, she comes up with it. Even the detective's like, holy heck. She goes, so I did. I became what a husband would be. So in one fell swoop, she gave them the two things that they needed. One, here's the reason Betsy gave me the life insurance money and not another member of her family. I was what a husband would be to her. And then Russ saw us. And so that night when Betsy died, he must have seen me leaving and flew into a rage when he went in the house and killed her. This is just a month before the trial. She lets that little goodie go.
This woman is a pathological liar. Oh my gosh.
So anyway, so they let Russ go. He's acquitted. Pam's ticked, but she's also very nervous and thinks, I got to do something. They're coming for me. I need him to go back to prison. And so what she did, oh my gosh, I still have a hard time with this one. She got in her car and started trolling a trailer park 15 minutes from her home. Saw a woman out there leaning against the railing, watching her dog. Pam pulls up at the bottom of the driveway. She's in a brand new Arcadia. Rolls the window down, says, hey, do you babysit? And the lady's like, who drives around and acts a total stranger if they babysit? And she walks down and she goes, no. She goes, okay, that's okay. I'm Kathy. I'm the producer with Dateline. And I'll give you $1,000 if you get in the car with me and go right up here where we have something set up. And I just want you to do a 911 reenactment call. We do this all the time. $1,000 cash, easy money. Are you in? And the lady's thinking something's hinky here, but she wants to see where it's going. This woman's very street smart. So she said, let me put my dog in. Takes the dog in, puts a knife inside the pouch of her hoodie, just in case, gets in the car with Pam. They drive a little bit, and Carol goes, could I see some credentials that you're with Dateline? Oh, I don't have them with me. They're where we're going. I'll show them to you. No problem. So finally she says, you know what? I need to go back and at least get my shoes on. Can you take me back? So Pam takes her back, and Carol was smart enough to say, could you pull in the driveway? Because I got bare feet. She pulls in the driveway, and Carol has a security camera facing the driveway that caught Pam's her license plate, and you can clearly see Pam. And she starts to get out of the car, looks up and went, you've got cameras. And she goes, yes, I do. And I don't want to do this. And she goes in the house and calls 911 and says, there's this crazy woman driving around offering money, saying she's with Dateline. I think there's something wrong. So Pam goes around the block, sees a guy mowing the lawns for the complex, cuts him off as he's coming toward her. And she goes, I'll give you $1,000, and gives him the spiel. He goes, no, I got to get all these done. I'm not interested. She goes home. She waits 6 days, and I don't know if it's because she was worried about the security camera and wanted to wait to see if police showed up at her door, but she waits 6 days. And it also might have been that happened to be when her husband was going to be away. They flip houses. He may have had a job somewhere, but she needed the house to herself. She goes back out, this time to an apartment complex, sees a young 33-year-old man sitting there, Louis Gumpenberger, gives him the whole Dateline story, and he bought it. He had been in a car wreck and was mentally disabled. He had the mentality of a 12-year-old, and he limped. And what is so awful is that she knew that immediately. His speech is slurred. There's no way she didn't know, I got the wrong guy here. She gets him in the car, takes him to her house. On the way says, here's what you're going to do to earn the money. You're going to say just this one line. You're going to come in. We're going to pound on the walls to make you sound like an intruder. And you're going to say, do you want me to do to you what we did to Betsy's wife? What you did to Betsy's wife. And he couldn't get the line straight. And so Pam, she has him come in. There's pounding noises, but she makes a real 911 call so that she can have a witness. And it's interesting. She actually called 911 3 times. She hung up the first 2, which is probably because Louis got the line wrong or he wasn't where he was supposed to be. Finally, she puts the call through and says, help, help, there's an intruder in my house. And you hear the pounding, and then you hear Louis say, you want me to do to you? And he got the line wrong. And she went, no, I won't get in the car with you. No. It was the most horrible acting job ever. And the dispatcher's going, ma'am, what's your address? And she wouldn't give it to them because she didn't want them to get there too soon. She kept saying, ma'am, what's your address? And, help, 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 help. And then finally you hear 5 gunshots. And she shot him. And she killed him. And she's got 911 live on the line as a witness. When the shots went off, the smoke alarm went off. And you can hear it shrilling in the background. You can hear the dispatcher say there's an alarm going off. She's talking to the police that are on their way. And then there's this weird silence for like 20 seconds where you don't hear Pam yelling help. You don't hear anything. And then she suddenly says, hello, who is this? Who is this? And she goes, help, help, is somebody coming? Help. They went, ma'am, there's someone on their way. What's your address? And then she gives them the address. Okay, they're coming. Help, help. And she just keeps this going. She goes, I'm going outside. I'm going outside. So she got her dog out of the backyard, a 1-year-old puppy, but he was kind of big. Chief Neske's the first to arrive, and she's going, he's in there. I shot him. I shot him. I shot him. And he goes in and he's dead. And they said, what happened? She goes, this car, I'm backing out to go to Home Depot, and this car pulled up, and this guy jumped out and jumped in the passenger seat of my car and held a knife to my neck and said, we're going to the bank to get Russ's money. And I knocked the knife out of his hand and ran in the house, and he followed me and I shot him. And this guy's saying, who's Russ? I don't know any Russ. You don't know any Russ? No. And all she's given them is her first name. They have no idea who they're messing with until finally they put her in the back of the ambulance to see if she's okay. And the medic comes out and comes over to Chief Ness. He goes, do you know who that is? That's Pam Hupp. And Chief Nessie's going, I know this name. He goes, the Faria case, the murder case a few years ago in Lincoln County. And he went, oh, no. And I interviewed him for the book. In fact, his interview is one of my favorites. And he said, Rebecca, it was one of those moments where the whole group went, oh. Like, and he said, and she's standing there saying, I don't know a Russ. She was at the trial and everything else. She was a witness. And so they took her in, and I'll wrap this up. They arrest her 6 days later for the murder. And while they have her in the interrogation room reading her rights, they leave to go get her, call her lawyer. They come back. She goes, I got to go to the bathroom. They have a female officer take her to the bathroom. She's in there a long time. And finally, they yell out, Pam, are you all right? I'm good. And while she's saying I'm good, she is stabbing herself in the neck with a big pin over and over, both sides and her wrists, until finally they knock the door down. She's laying on the floor. It was a half-hearted attempt at suicide. And the pictures in the book, some of the wounds were a little deep, but they weren't life-threatening. And she is now in prison for Louis Gumpenberger's death. They found that the knife that she said he used that was in her car was bought at the Dollar Tree on her receipt. They found the receipt. And so in case your listeners are wondering, why did she kill him to start with? In his pocket was found a fake note she'd written that was supposed to be from Russ, saying, go get her, take her to the bank, get the $150,000, then stab her in the neck the way she did Betsy. All of this stuff, the way Betsy was found, it was supposed to look like Russ sent him to kill her so that Russ would go back to prison and the suspicion would be away from her. She killed an innocent man simply for that.
To get out of.
Yep.
Wow. I mean, all of this is so incredible and sounds so interesting. Can you,
yes.
For all of the viewers that are watching, can you let them know the different places that they can pick this book up if they want to keep reading on the story?
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's on Amazon. All of my books are. You can go to my website, RebeccaFPittmanBooks.com. All of the books are there, the History and Haunting series and this one. And I will be doing a sequel when the death penalty trial comes out probably next year for Betsy's murder.
Perfect. And we'll, Rini and I will make sure that we also link that website on both of our social medias so that you guys have easy access to it. Clearly, just from these last couple minutes or these last hour, you've seen how interested this case is. So be sure to go pick up her book. And there's a couple others I think you guys would be interested in.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So sorry I didn't have any questions. I was so intrigued by everything you were saying. Like
I was loving your face.
I just didn't want to interrupt. I was like, oh my gosh.
I could listen for hours.
I know.
This story is so incredible. But thank you very, very much for having me.
And
yes, thank you for being on the show.
Yes. And remember to listen to Afterlife Chronicles with Nicole Strickland. So we will see everybody next week. We have kind of a little bit of surprise for looks like Ashley's husband next week.
We're gonna try. I'm gonna have to bribe him, but we're gonna try.
All right. I will see you guys all next week.
Good night.
Night.